So welcome everybody, just as a way to launch us really, and to find out a little bit about our state and where we're all from this evening. We have a check-in question, which is, what is budding? For you, what is budding? And as we go around the circle to answer that, if you could also indicate, just give your name again and where it is that you're joining from tonight.
And my apologies, I have to stop share so that I can type in the circle, because otherwise I can't get to the screen. So April, why don't you start, and then I will go next, and then by that time I will have the list in the chat.
Great. Okay, April Struthers, coming to you from the Sunshine Coast, the unceded ancestral territory of the Siksika Nation. And what is budding for me is actually a sense that spring is on its way. And that's only a sense. It doesn't look like that outside yet, but it feels that way. And over to Ben.
So just the circle then will be after me, Heather, Becca, Barbara, Giselle, Jake, Roland, and then Ronnie. And that's in the chat. And you know, what's budding for me is tonight. So I think it's been I've had a really great seat kind of at the center, watching a lot of different things happen. And so yeah, there's just a lot of ideas and enthusiasm budding for me. So I pass over to Heather.
And you're muted, Heather.
Yeah, there you are. Heather, I'm coming from the bedroom here in the house on the land. So I'm here in person and also on Zoom. And what's budding for me is I had a really good meeting last night with people from Foodlands, and what's budding for me is the beginning of a focus on bringing art back onto our farms. And by art, I mean different ways of knowing and expressing ourselves. So that was very moving for you to begin with a song. And I want to see on our farm music and dance and singing and all kinds of ways of us sharing our space together in community. So I'm just holding that as a possibility. And I think it's over to Becca now.
Hi, I'm Becca. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, the Ho-Chunk Nation territory. 4 Lakes. It's the English translation of the Tejope, the name of traditional name for Madison area. Well, since you mentioned art, I will share what I'm looking down at is this rug that I've been crocheting for several weeks, and it's almost done. I'm finishing the edge. And I just found a natural rug pad made in the US company to order a rug pad for it, like cut to order. So I'm excited about that. And I just moved into co-housing here in October, and it's all kinds of new things budding here, relationships. And there was a cooperative games night happening in the common house, which I participated in for an hour and a half or so before I came over here. And although I really wanted to like hang out with the kids, and so I ended up playing a game that wasn't quite so cooperative, but it was a good opportunity to get to know the kids. And I managed to a couple of the, a few of the older kids that I don't know. And I managed to facilitate a little bit of a conversation about, well, since I have no idea what to do here, why don't you all help me decide? And, let's discuss why you think I should do that move. And so that was kind of fun. Over to Barbara.
I am also here on the land. Very happy to be here. I regret I don't know the name of the territory or the peoples of this territory to acknowledge them, and I deep bow to them regardless of whether I know the name or not. And I will learn that because what's budding for me is residency here in this growing season. So I'm looking toward clarity and making a proposal to make that happen. So actually what's budding, actually that's a future thing. It's not necessarily right now. What right now is what's budding is possibility, and what's budding is alignment, and what's budding is connection with what feels like my people, and the joy. What's budding is the joy of these spontaneous exchanges of words and connection, and it's not all about ideas and thought, but also about this connectivity. Yeah, just connection on sort of all the levels of the plane. And so what that is actually, maybe all of those things are a driver for what's budding is delight. I find myself using that word a lot these days. So lots of alignment and kind of a deep current flavor of joy that I'm choosing to call delight. And I believe I am passing to, forgive me if I say your name wrong, Giselle.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Sometimes if you log off and log back on, that can fix it. We will let you back in.
We can wait for you.
Well, and actually in the interim, I propose that we go on to Jake, and then whenever Giselle comes back on, we'll just circle back and include her in there.
Okay. I'm coming from Victoria. I wanted to be on the land because I miss it deeply. It's been a challenging little while with my son's health and supporting that. And so even though he was vastly improved and is going to school full time, it's been a challenge. And so what's budding for me is hope that there's some movement and progress for my son's health. I was in the park and I was looking at the beginning of the buds on the trees, and so the warmer weather is always more activity. As I take my dog to the park and watch her run around in the sunshine, it's always a wonderful thing. However, what's another thing that's budding is the Mill Bay connection with my friend is deepening, and as his dream of having more people come to the land and work the land that's in Mill Bay, I'm looking forward to introducing him to Pender as well and to everyone here. So that's budding, is more connections. Thank you. Back to you, Giselle.
You want to try logging on your?
Actually, there's on your toolbar on the bottom, there's the little microphone and there's a little caret next to it. If you click on it, it'll bring up a menu and it says select microphone. It may be that you just need to select the microphone just to let it know.
Can you hear me now?
There we
Yes.
go.
Wonderful.
Cool.
This is a new computer and I'm getting to know it little by little. So I had trouble getting my camera, finding out where to plug it in. Anyway, I'm here. I'm here from La Fontaine, Ontario, from my residence. And I'm also Roland's mother. And what is budding for me is communication and relationships. I live in a seniors residence and we're 60 some people here. And I think I know every one of them by name. And we are really a community, and I work to build this community and to keep it together and to make it as strong as it can be. And so right now, everything is budding. It's working. And I'm not sure what territory I'm on. Is it Wendat? Would you know, Rana?
Actually, historically it was, currently it is Anishinaabe.
Anishinaabe. Okay, thank you. So who do I go to now? To
Roland.
Rana? Okay, to you, Rana.
Okay, I am sitting in the kitchen next to the bedroom, and my name is Roland, and I was listening to what everyone was saying. I was like, oh, how deep, how wonderful, but really one of the things this morning that we talked about in Circle was keeping it simple. So what's budding for me is an appetite for cookies, which is completely honest. And so I will pass over to Ronnie.
Keeping it real. Well, I just moved today to an all queer BIPOC centered housing co-op here in North Central Austin. And so there's a whole new community, a whole new lifeboat. There's a lot going on here that is very lifeboaty in their own way, which is really awesome. And I feel like I have feet in 3 lifeboats, but I only have 2 feet. So I'm not really sure how that works. It's kind of like playing Twister. So maybe it's a hand on one of them. Another lifeboat that I have joined that is really budding for me is really diverse community of activists, a Palestinian-led activist community, lots of Jewish allies and interfaith clergy who are all becoming dear, close comrades and friends. And we're all going through it right now. So it's nice to have another lifeboat to poke into, to really sort of fill up and be like, yes, like this is good stuff. This is some restful space for me. So yeah, a lot of community in my life, a lot of new people, a lot of activity, and just sort of finding my place, which of course is always shifting, but I continue to land here in Austin and root down. So yeah, that's my check-in. So I was the end of the circle, so we will circle back to April, who is going to lead us in our agreements for the evening and also sort of for the rest of the weekend as well.
So we gather today and always in the sort of life of the fable of the blind ones and the elephant. And I'm thinking that probably everybody here knows that fable. Basically, it's that we can only sense into a certain part of everything that's going on. And it takes all of us to kind of get the bigger picture and more accuracy and reality. And that's why groups like ours, and that's why getting a number of perspectives is really the only way to sort of figure out how to go forward in a way that's realistic and reflects real life. And to do that, we are sort of buoyed up by the principles of sociocracy. And you're probably familiar with at least some of these principles. What is unique, I think, about sociocracy is that it puts them all together and that it gives us ways to kind of stabilize and to make very ethical our efforts. So the principles are to seek effectiveness, devoting time to what brings us closer to our objectives, to test out all of our assumptions through experiments. That's empiricism. Continuously improving, changing incrementally, little bit by little bit, to accommodate the learning that develops through this kind of system and in all of us acting together. It's done in a spirit of equivalence, which involves people in decisions that affect them. So without everybody, we can't go forward, really. So if there's anything that affects somebody, then they need to be part of the decision-making. Making information about all kinds of things, including decision-making, accessible to everyone, and using consent as the basis to go forward. And that means that we raise, seek out, and resolve objections. Before we move forward in a decision, objections are sought or considerations are sought, and we deal with them before there's decisions made. Accountability is really important because it keeps us all kind of responsive when we need to be. And it holds us to doing what we agree to do and taking ownership of what it was that we agreed and our responsibility for that. Now, in doing this work, we've over time come up with a series of agreements that are, we think, quite useful and perhaps universal. So I'm just going to go over them now. Some of you have seen these repeatedly, but it's worth having a look at because they form the basis for how we are together. And the first one is that nobody has to do anything. You can choose what it is that you do. You can choose to be here or not be here, but your choices, as Ben says, have consequences. So no coercion, but you need to be responsible for the consequences of your choice. We ask that you listen first for understanding and then give your contribution or critique what you've heard. But we think that kind of hearing the whole situation, coming to grips with it a bit, and then moving on from that basis is a good one to work with. A recognition, too, that we're all in this together and we're all in the same thing together. We ask that you speak from the heart and suspend judgment so that you hold judgments and hear what the whole picture is and what the whole set of contributions are. And to do that in a spirit of generosity and curiosity, and that implies also kindness and gentleness. One thing that we found is really important in working together is to have some fun, to celebrate what you do, to recognize what you do. And our way of referring to that is peg the funometer. So we kind of have a little meter of, are we having enough fun yet? And we think that being able to work together lightly but seriously is a really a good mark of collaboration, I guess. So these agreements are offered in the spirit of asking, what do you need? What do you need to be able to show up fully and to work this evening and this weekend? So let me just ask for a show of thumbs around, do you agree with the agreements? And okay, I can mostly see thumbs. Some of them are a little dim, but thank you. Is there anything that needs very quickly and briefly to be added to the list that we've come up with? I'm not hearing any additions. Okay, on that basis, I think we're ready to move ahead. So I'm going to bounce it back to Ben.
And I'm going to bounce it back to Ronnie.
Hello. So we are going to continue our circle for the evening, and we have a series of questions to guide our sharing circle. And the first question is, what is emerging? What is emerging here in this space and this weekend amongst all of us and our relations? And to start this, I'm actually going to bounce it back to April because you are the beginning of the circle. What is emerging?
Well, it's emerging that I'm the beginning of the circle. It's one thing. I think with all of our work together, what is emerging is that there's something happening. There's something different that is happening from a year ago when we met. We were kind of testing out the whole idea of, can we do this? And by golly, we spent a year doing it. And in the rest of the weekend, we'll be going over what's happened. But lots of stuff is emerging. And for me, some of it is unexpected, some of it was predicted, but that's the joy of working together too. And I'm passing over to Ben.
Yeah, I think I have a whole bunch of different ideas that are sort of popping at the same time. And I was thinking about Linda Eleanor, who's one of the people who's interested in a couple of the guilds who I've worked with for a while. And she was kind of like trying to come up to speed on the lifeboat, like where did this lifeboat thing happen? And like trying to get a sense of how old the lifeboat is. And you know, the term itself, Lifeboat Academy, like that kind of formulation is 18 months old, something like that. I don't think it's even 2 years old. And but that at the same time, this is probably ideas that Roland and I were kicking around 10 years ago. And so there and actually that what's emerging from me is there is this, it's the spiral, like a really embodied feeling of the spiral of, in a way, here we are again at the beginning, not even really starting yet, like there's a way of thinking about this, like we're not there yet, and yet we're so much further than where we were. And actually, I think that is part of what I think is, we say all the time, building the lifeboat is the lifeboat. And so there's one of the things that I feel is emerging is just this kind of I kind of want to say perpetual motion machine. There's the process. I think we are tapping into a way of working that is yielding fruit. And there's definitely energy coming together around this. And I don't think that we own any part of it. Like I feel like we are tapping into ideas that are emerging simultaneously in lots of places, and ways of working that are that lots of people are coming to around the same time. And so one of the big things that is shifting for me is the I don't want to say the sense of urgency, but I at this moment, right now in time, I don't know how long I can hold on to this, and I wish I could bottle it. But right now, right here, there is a sense of timelessness. There's urgency, but timelessness. And there's certainly the whole notion of like a ticking clock, which has been really prominent in my mind for a very long time, is really starting to fade. And that is, for me, it's making so much more space available for the art and the joy and the delight and the serendipity. And so yeah, there is just something about, I feel like what wants to happen here is it's holding the space. There's this sort of, it's like being invitational and just I think what wants to happen here is that it's just like the perpetual invitation, and and it's perpetually coming back to this. You come back to this place, come back to the land, come back to this process of discovery. And you don't, and you're not gonna, and yeah, exactly. It's not about the finish line. It's really about just kind of sinking into the process itself and walking the talk and seeing what happens. So that's where I seem to be at the moment. So Heather, over to you. What's emerging, or what wants to happen here?
Well, it's spring. So with spring, what emerges for me is kind of new beginnings and strengthening of the relationships we already have, and a new kind of optimism. It's not so much we're going anywhere. It's kind of like we're here together and what is unfolding for us. And I think what's emerging is a clarity on how we are going to work together to make this happen. And I'll pass it on to, who's the next person?
I think it's me.
It's you, Becca, yeah.
Well, I'm still in the process of moving into co-housing, and still in the process of moving out of my old place. And my old place I lived in for 19 years, including years that Ben was living in our basement on and off. And then in that same basement, there's boxes from before I lived in that house from when I was in graduate school with Ben. And so I've been sorting through boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. And Ben, I found the all the coding sheets from Laird's facilitation training that we did the developmental evaluation of. And my co-housing community that I've just moved into is now going to be a host community for that training 20 years later. It's going to be on Zoom, but I'm like in it as a participant and helping organize that weekend of meetings. And just, I mean, you talked about the spiral, Ben, and it's like, whoa, I'm in a whole different loop of this spiral about group process. And this is a training that was developed for co-housing, for, group process in co-housing communities in the US, well, in North America. And so I'm not sure what is emerging from that, other than maybe just more of that kind of understanding, similar to what you were saying, Ben, about like there's a timelessness to this, or a non-linearity and a more acceptance of that. And I think that in terms of my relationship with Lifeboat, what's emerging for me in that is like realizing how much it supports me, even though I'm here and I'm not on the land, like to be with people who care so deeply about the land and about cooperative living and decision making and group process. And yeah, there was another thought and it went away. I'll share it if it comes back in another round. But just sort of gratitude about that, and just wanting to remember to keep that sense, rather than it being like the other thing that's emerging is I'm way busier than I've been in a while. Like I've got all these projects, kind of like you were saying, Ronnie, and so trying to keep in mind the mutuality of it, rather than, oh, another thing I've got to deliver or take off my list. Passing to Barbara.
Thanks. All of the questions that are presented have been in the last little while. They all seem to be coming to the same place, just different framings or phrasings of it. It's about 50 years ago that with perfect clarity came to me a vision of this, of what the Lifeboat Academy is shaping into. I believed I would do that thing, that I would animate it and be a co-creator of it. 50 years ago, I was a kid. And still kind of a kid. But anyway, the thing that's budding right now is the actual shaping of that. The manifestation, the actual embody, like it's taking physical form. It's not just heart's desire in that field. It's actually happening in my life. And if that's not a bud, I don't know what is. Like to me, that's a bud. It's fantastic. And so I am I'm just resonating in there. I'm not going to say anything more than that right now, and I'm going to pass it to Giselle.
Um, I wanted to be here tonight just to say hello and to wish everybody a very good charrette weekend. And I'm going to bed because I have a different time than you do, and I've had a very busy day. So I'm very glad to see all of you, and I wish you a very good time, very good weekend. Good night.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night. Sleep well.
I guess it's me. So I will, what's emerging? What's emerging is a change of life. I'll be starting to receive my pension, and that's something which I didn't expect to happen quite so early. But well, it's not that early, but just by a couple of years. But I am now curious about how that's going to shape into my activity. I'm curious where things are going to go. During this time of winter, when I haven't been to Pender for months, it's been a winter in my heart as well, a bit because things just sort of are dormant. But my passion for what's happening here is still very, very strong. It was 35, well, actually, yeah, at least that, maybe more, where I wrote down similar, this is what I want to see happen. This is what I see with the circles and with the land and even food, the food sovereignty, as well as food security, and all those ideas that this has got to shift to this if we're going to be sustainable. And I never saw a good model. I loved living in co-housing, and it was powerful and exciting. And for me, we left feeling a little bit, well, it's not quite the right model. And I'm looking forward to seeing more and more lifeboats with this model emerge, and seeing how that can change the world. So that what's emerging for me is the spring of those ideas, and hopefully once again having wonderful meals and conversation on Pender.
So what's emerging for me is something about the challenging the illusion of separation. I'm hearing from what people are saying. I've been hearing a lot of I wasn't expecting, I was surprised, or I feel a connection with what's going on, in this kitchen. And illusion of separation, and the thing about the choir. The thing about the choir where that it can maintain a note infinitely with everyone taking a turn, taking a breath. So we don't have to all be at the same place at the same time doing the same thing. And in fact, it is the diversity and the variety and the difference that is the strength in the organism. There, succinct. I will pass to Ronnie.
I'm also really feeling the spiraling theme, sort of the coming back around, deepening, and sort of the the unpredictability of that, and also kind of the predictability in a way. It's just really interesting. And I realized earlier today while I was in the process of moving that where I'm living now is 2 miles away from the house I lived in with my mom and my sister from ages 3 to 5, which is just like wild to me that I've lived all over Turtle Island, literally coast to coast. And here I am back where I lived when I was 4. And that just feels, I don't know, it just feels special and meaningful, and I don't even really know why. It just does. And I'm noticing, I'm thinking about like the mycelial nature of this network and humanity in general. When we really lean into connection, you know, I still feel so deeply connected to the farm on Sadeas, even though I'm not there. You know, seeing those of you who I've spent time with there, you know, I'm seeing the backgrounds on people's screens. It's like, oh, I slept in that room for a few months, and then I slept in that room for a few months. And it's just like, I'm really feeling the anchor of the farm and the Lifeboat Academy for myself, which was also making me think about grounding and groundlessness. And everything is groundless, but at the same time, we create grounding together. Like when we consciously come together and be in relationship with land, that creates a sense of rootedness. And I'm really, really feeling that. And that just feels really great and amazing. And yeah. And just yeah, feeling like a node in the network, very much so, and feeling like I'm really embodying so much of what we talked about and how we want the network to grow through each of us. And so I'm really excited to see where it goes. And already I'm bringing so much that I've learned through the Lifeboat Academy to my other lifeboats and to other relationships and other groups. Which feels so good to be able to be like, I have some tools, I have some like experience that I can give, that will benefit people. So good stuff. I want to bottle this too right now. Just gonna like save it. Yeah, put it in my heart, and you can all have some. So that was our first round, and we've already been naturally going into our second question, which is, what are you noticing within and amongst all of what we've been sharing? What are the patterns that are happening? Back to April.
Well, a big notice for me is spirals, which I've used as both a graphic and a developmental explanation for humanness and humans and learning and development over time, and test my own understandings against that quite often, but also have deliberately used that as a teaching tool for other folks, I guess. And if not a spiral, at the very least, there's feelings around cycles, whether it's coming back to the place where you lived when you were 4, or some other kind of cycle. For Barbara, it sounded like, the life cycle of when I was yay old, I had this dream, and guess what? The cycle has come around to living it. And that's another theme that came up for me, was the living of ideas. So not only the testing out stuff, and not only having an idea or a concept or something in the back of your head, in the back of other people's heads, but then actually experiencing what living those ideas is like, and then sharing that knowledge with all its surprises and challenges, so on. Transforming. There's something that's rippling through this for all of me, in that there are transformations, maybe not complete transformations, and maybe just little tiny wiggly transformations. But when you think of how powerful an earthworm is and how good they are at developing all the great soil that we need, maybe we're having earthworm wiggles transformations. Well, I am. Let me own that wiggle. But there is something about that. So learning to recognize little tingles of transformation, for me, that's a theme, and I'm hearing a bit about that from other folks. And the grounding of being on the land or not being on the land, and the different groundings that happen there, and the faith in the land, whether you're physically there or not. And I'm someone that has a compulsion to get my hands dirty, which I've managed to do in professional ways as well as outback gardening ways. And there's something about that too. The grounding is actually, we're talking soil, we're talking dirt, we're talking feeling it in your hands, feeling it on your face at the end of the day. And on to Ben.
Well, I'm noticing things in they're sparking things, and actually one of the things that got sparked, I guess, Becca, you started it with the, I'm thinking about Paul Lichterman and his research, and he was one of our professors, and his research was on how, because at the time, one of the criticisms, there was a discussion about civil society, and bowling alone was the big thing, and no one does anything together in groups anymore, and we've lost our ability to relate and to function in groups. And one of the things Paul looked at was the kind of the portable culture, that even though groups are, coming together and disbanding and people are moving, and, there's that kind of that nomadicness to it, you start to develop this lingo, or these rituals that are common across the different groups. And then that allows you to kind of land and anchor quick. And so, and Ronnie, I feel like, you kind of, you already, and that it is interesting because you've got these layers happening at once, right? You have a personal history there. You also have the experience that you gained by going away and coming back. And then there's how things work now, and anyhow, it's making me think of the, manifestation is make with your hands. Like, that's the meaning of the word. It's, and I think it's been co-opted by the advertising industry to make you think that it's sitting in a chair and thinking really hard about what you want. Because, that's what marketing is, getting you to think about what you want and then assuming someone else is going to make it happen. So it is, I think there's the getting dirty, it's what Roland and I talk about in terms of similarities between art and science, is that you're always pushing back and forth. There's a dialogue, and it's the pushing back and forth that actually is the engine, and it's both and it's embracing the power of both and in a kind of bring it on. It's sort of, both and exponentially. So it's like, and we will take all of those both ands and we will link them together and we will make something, and then, then watch out. And so, yeah, I think there's that sense of biomimicry, that there's something about we know more than we think we do. And a lot of what we're talking about is a process that just allows people to make visible what they already know and to refine it in a way where, and so it is celebrating, look how much you already know, look how much you've already tried, look how much you can already do. And hey, what if we could make it a little better? And then that turns it into kind of more of a game. And so I think that's why there's a portability, but also a groundedness. Like, I don't think that we can exist as a virtual academy. I don't think we can exist in a virtual space, because we could if we all agree that there's going to be a physical space that we are, that we root in, that could work. But I think that's why having the anchor or anchors, having multiple anchors where there are physical touch points where people can actually have that long-term relationship with the land rather than being migrants pushed off, pushed along. Anyhow, I think it's just building on those ideas of there's something about the physicality of it, the reality pushing back against the niceness of ideas, and at the same time the kind of a portability that it's grounded and it's portable at the same time. So I pass over to Heather.
So am I muted here? Let's see. No, I'm not. I've been muting and unmuting myself. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't muted. Yeah, one of the gifts that Ben gave me last time I was here in Pender was the gift of "and also." And I've been experiencing in my own community that we are always talking or often talking about either or. And that's, for me, doesn't include everything I want to include. So I have been practicing "and also," and I have really good results as a result of that. So I want to say, as I was listening to all of you, that yes, and what Ronnie says is true. And also what Barbara says, I can resonate with that. And Becca. So it's kind of like my connection with everyone is sweet. And I'm here physically because I also want that physical grounding connection. And I'm a little resistant because I meet with people on Zoom all the time. And yet it's a gift to have Zoom where we can meet with people that are all across the country. So for me, the connectedness, I'm reminded of the virtual connectedness and the physical connectedness. Not that we need to make choices, but that it's a tool we use when it's really appropriate and when it connects us all. And I'll pass it on to Becca.
It's so interesting. I just this morning read an article in Communities Magazine about neo-nomadism, like an intentional community, and how there's all these intentional communities or semi-intentional communities that are made up of people who are mobile, living in RVs and or part of the year in RVs or all year long by choice or not by choice, and how they are building community together, and how the intentional communities movement should embrace this as part of the movement and make more connections, and make where there is land, make it available to people who are in RVs, and I'm really interested in that theme, and that was the one, the article I chose to read of the whole thing first or second or something. And I'm also just sitting here with, like, when I first started to dream about communal living was when I was a kid and hearing about the kibbutzim in Israel, and went to visit and kind of fell in love with the land and the sense of homeland that I was taught, that this land was my homeland and my only true homeland, the only place I was going to be truly safe as a Jew. And then I didn't go back when I learned what, that it was being stolen from Palestinians who had lived there continuously for so many generations. And so I feel the pain of that also, and really feel, Ronnie, what you're maybe imagine going through about that. And so I feel but from there I went to live at Sandhill Farm, and not directly from kibbutz, but like inspired by kibbutz. And that was where I met Laird. And, you know, when I left there, I always thought, you know, at some point I would move back into intentional community co-housing someday. And here I am. And yet the dream, like my dream of communal living and the reality at Sandhill were so far apart. And so I really resonate with that whole theme too, of like ideas versus dreams, and like, what can we actually pay attention to our grief when things aren't the way we imagined they would be, and to our shame when in an attempt to make something better, we actually make something worse. And, or maybe it's better for us, but worse for somebody else. And can we be like, can we re-indigenize without appropriating indigenous land and culture, and maybe a little bit more nomadic capacity is the way to do that, so that we're not so much like, this is my home land. And yet I would love to be there right now, you know, so like, and be able to claim that. And so it's all these contradictions is what I'm feeling, and appreciating the ability to speak into a group that will appreciate them. I pass to Barbara.
Wow. What I'm noticing of the whole is what you said, everybody, plus a thing that I've had a quality of experience that I've had recently repeating. And so I'm learning to trust this thing when it happens, to kind of lean back into the arms of that. And that thing is this, is that there's always, outside of what I want or what a group of other humans that I'm associated with think we want, outside of that, there's always a thing. I'm sorry, I keep using that word, but there really aren't words. There's this thing that wants to happen. It's its own energy. It's its own, it emerges on its own when there's enough space allowed. The thing that wants to happen happens. And if it's not driven by will, mine or somebody else, and okay, I'll just keep it simple. I'll just say that without digressing. Barbara, stay on track. And that thing that wants to emerge is typically some variety of essential intelligence, you know, that is way beyond the me or the us of a bunch of ego-driven humans. It's a thing that is integral to itself, and I can be with that, and I can trust that that is the thing that wants to be, and that it's right. And so I just used a bunch of words to say, just to sort of contextualize it, to say what I'm noticing is that an emergence now is happening, taking the form-ishness of the Lifeboat Academy. It's happening here, it's happening now, it's happening in our hands. And it's pretty, I'm not going to swear, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's really a good thing. And we are onto something big. So I want to reflect back to that lovely song that grounded me at the beginning. Take the tiller. Take that tiller. So that's a pattern that I'm noticing. Is there's you know, good number of us here tonight that are If we don't have the tiller in our hand at this exact moment, it's not that far away. And so the one more thing is, yes, a pattern that I'm noticing is a pattern that I personally, I own it. I identify with yes, and I feel like I'm in company. That this is in response to some recognition of yes, unequivocal, like not conditioned by anything, just yes. And I believe it is going to Jake.
So wonderful to hear so many of you say things that just I can say yes to. It's a yes, and goes that development. This is a time and place in history, in our accelerating world, accelerating change with the climate, that so important for me to come back into these communities that really hold the seeds, and really it's about this the cherishing of those seeds, and the longing for that seed to grow and then more seeds from more plants, and just more and more and more, because I've got a lot of grief with what's happening in the climate, and I have no faith or trust in the system being just, unless we grab hold and have our little pocket of where things are more just, where things are more looking for the future. And I love that, save what you can, in that song, save what you can. And I guess I'm just acknowledging myself right now. There is loss, and there's going to be so much more loss all around the world. So many people are already suffering in that and experiencing that, much more than I do. I am so privileged. And when I was at the Stolen Sisters March here in Victoria, where we were just recognizing the challenging, these Indigenous women that spoke up and challenged us, especially us white males, myself as a white male, to, when I walk down the streets of Victoria, know that it is at a huge cost, and I see so much of that cost still continuing on, and to be part of something that isn't that cost, and it has a vision of the land not being our own, but being shared and decommodified, and food sovereignty, and welcoming for all those who want to build something and to be in a lifeboat, and to steer for something that has some hope. Just the psychological, what is coming up for me is the psychological need that we have as humans to have hope, and have a place where we can point to and say, there's light there. And so I'm really grateful to be part of what's happening right here, right now, on Sudeus and all around the world. And you can just breathe in. A lot of grief, and a lot of playful puppy. Yeah, he wants to pull a sock. So this is Nyoki, and she has my sock. She loves to steal my sock. So a little bit of joy, a little bit, because I like what we said earlier about joy and laughing, and she's wondering why I'm not playing with her more, but then why am I talking? Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it on to Roland. Thank you.
Barbara, when you say I'm not gonna swear, I just edit it in, so I hear it anyway. Can someone remind me what is this round? What's the question for this round again?
What are you noticing?
What am I noticing?
What
Okay.
patterns?
Well, what I'm noticing is we're all engaged in I am hearing our agreements over and over again, the agreements that we have from tonight and the agreements that we have in Circle. I think that the one that's coming up for me, one of the ones that's coming up for me is what is the one about repetition? Anyway, repetition is good because
Frequent reminders.
frequent reminders so that you remember things, like how to say things. Frequent reminders, yeah, frequent reminders, and a really useful way to get those reminders is by having these kinds of conversations. The other thing, what's sort of overarching all of that is all sorts of agreements that have to do with living life as an experiment. That, there's this agreement that we don't have all the answers. Ultimately, no one has all the answers. That we try things, and I can't remember. There was somebody who was speaking, and I just had this sense of, oh, I tried that and it wasn't quite what I was expecting. Oh, and I tried this and it wasn't quite right. And it's sort of like that's removing what doesn't work, and but I think it's also the awareness that it's not to get to the perfect answer, but it's this recognition that that we are in such a complex system that we can get closer to something that works well, and that even then it continues to evolve and it continues to change. Everything's alive, everything is always changing, everything is metabolizing, and that includes things like um, feelings of the feelings of fulfillment, as feelings of grief, feelings of joy, feelings of rage. They're all information, and we can use that information. So yeah, that's the theme I'm seeing, is that we're engaged in living life as an experiment, and that the inspiration for that is that I don't think that this is putting words in anyone's mouth, but at a bone level, we feel that things aren't quite right. So over to Ronnie.
Oh, well, I really like what I think it was Jake who talked about communities that hold the seeds for what's coming next, what's emerging. And I've noticed, things are changing, not only climate wise, but in all of these communities that we're all part of, things are changing. Humans are figuring out better ways to work together because we have to. It's literally a biological imperative that we find ways that work better. And I really also appreciate, Jake, the grief piece and the loss, which is such a big part of all of it. And Becca, I really deeply resonate with what you shared about sort of in a way, the loss of the dream of Israel and the kibbutzim and the myth that we were raised in about what's ours. And I want to tell us a quick story. So we in the Palestinian activism community I've been in for the last 4 months, we've been lobbying city council to pass a ceasefire resolution for weeks and weeks and weeks. And we show up at city council and we fill all the speaker spots, and we have Jews and clergy and young people and old, like everybody, and they won't do it. And this past week was the first time that a giant group of Zionists showed up to counter our presence. And after the meeting, it was very tense and scary and a lot of yelling. And after the meeting, my friend Layla, who's Palestinian, she took a man's hands, an old white Zionist man. She took his hands and she held his hands for like close to 10 minutes, and she talked to him, and she poured her heart out to him and explained, we want the same things. We want the hostages released. We want peace. Like, we want people to be okay. And she, she's just been like, her heart is in tatters, and she's pouring herself out to this man who's been brainwashed to believe that she's not human, and that. So there was a crowd around them and people holding them, and she's just holding his hands. And I was like, that's a bridge. We talk, I feel like in my communities, I talk, how do we build bridges? How do we have conversations? How do we reach each other? And she went over to him and she took his hands and she said, can I talk to you? And it was so profound. And she shared her grief and she shared her anger, but she talked to him like he was a person. And he listened and he received what she had to say. And, that's just I've never seen something like that before. And he probably had never held a Palestinian woman's hands before. But it was just this moment of a shift and a tide turning. Anyway, I'm really hearing echoes of that sort of thing here too. There's the subtle ways that we practice and we show up and we build community. And there's also moments like that where it's like almost like the ground opens up and something happens and it's like, whoa, like this hasn't happened before. At least not for me and for many of the people who witnessed that. So anyway, really moving, deeply heartbreaking times. And also in a way, I think through the heartbreak, there's room for miracles, like actual things that we didn't necessarily know could happen. So anyway, I wanted to check in about time. It's 9:30 where I am, and I'm very tired. It's the end of the 90-minute, chunk that we set aside for this. So, do we want to still do the fourth round? Let me look at my.
I would
notes
say
here.
let's just do. We're at the beginning of the charrette, so this is initiating the conversation. We're going to come back to elements of this in sort of more detail. So I think let's go to a closing part of the circle. And so
Great.
let's just kind of go towards a closing and kind of put us in a place where we can rest for tonight and come back to it tomorrow.
All right, so our closing question for this evening is just please share a word or two about how you would like to experience this weekend, an intention or a feeling, or just a couple words about how you would like this to unfold for yourself. Back to you, April.
I'm swimming in the warmth. And even though we're in an artificial virtual environment, it's warming me through your words and seeing your faces, watching some grief, some joy, long held wishes being kind of put out there. So that's what I want to keep on being part of. And thank you, everybody. Over to Ben.
The phrase that just came to me is just walk the talk. And I feel like, you know, the system works, long live the system. And, you know, we do as good as we can until we know better, and then we do better. And yeah, so it's kind of like just show up. And maybe that's, it sounds a little bit like copping out, but I actually feel like just show up, see what happens. That's how I want to experience the weekend. Over to Heather.
I'm here and I want hugs. Just simple as that. Over to Becca.
I want hugs too. The word that came to mind at the beginning of when the question was first asked was just more of this. And I appreciate the leniency of when I can and can't be here. Over to Barbara.
It's just the kind of echo in my head that is this: I want you to meet me. I want you to meet me. And it's a very old thing in my life. Like, I have often, lots not felt met. And so my primary experiences of being met, meeting and being met, I recognize that that's kind of an abridged version, and that's okay. And so what I want for this weekend is to meet you and be met in the service of this particular place, Spalding Valley Farm, and this particular project, Lifeboat Academy. Here we are together, virtually and otherwise. And so that's for this weekend. And I recognize that was more than a few words, and I thank you for your patience. And I'm giving this to Jake.
I think my word is clarity. I love the word. I love the spiral, and the spiral that we've all been in, having this grow both deeper and higher. Maybe it's not a spiral. Maybe it's a sphere that continues to loop in on itself. But I'm looking for the clarity of where things are at, how things are going, next steps, and some excitement. It's wonderful to see see you all, and to get caught up a little bit. So thank you so much. So clarity and excitement. Over to you, Roland.
Sorry, Barbara, I'm gonna have to say it, but let's do shit. I want to come out of this weekend with stuff to do. I want to have a pathway. I want steps, and I want to know what are the experiments that we're aiming for. And actually part of that also is what are the metrics that we want to use for these experiments, and anyway, all that stuff, all that good stuff. I want something concrete. So over to Ronnie.
The words, multiple words coming to me, lean in, to all of it, lean into the richness that's already here, the nourishment, the familiarity, the process, lean into the process, lean into the experiment, lean into the togetherness. And just, I want to let it all in and let it feed me to power the work, and let the work be rooted in like deep, rich, dark soil. Literally the soil on the farm. Actually, there you go. Haha, I figured it out. So that was it. I was the end of the circle. We did our closing, our checkout. And thank you all very, very much for being here. Oh, sorry, Ben.
Housekeeping.
Ben has stuff. Sorry.
Right, housekeeping. So I'm gonna share hopefully there. I'm trying to remember what my housekeeping was. Oh, right. So one of the activities that we have for this weekend is a badge art gallery. And so I just want to bring your attention to the Miro board again. We'll continue to use the Miro board, and I will put the link in chat just so you can check it out now. But part of the Miro board is intended to be an art gallery where you can post potential badges. And we're leaning into Heather's suggestions of more art on the farm. So we want to give people an opportunity to use a different part of your brain to think creatively. And we'll get started at 9 o'clock with going over the Miro board and what's been done. So if you haven't been up to speed, that's a way to come up to speed. And as a special little treat I'm going to dangle is that we'll also go over the Miro board, which see if I can.
You mean the asset map?
The asset, oh yeah, the
Yeah.
Kumu map, the asset map on the Miro board. And so this is, we took that spaghetti mass of relationships and concepts and connections, and we created this in Kumu, and it is just the coolest thing where you can look at connections. This is going 2 rings out, or you can look at so these are all of the connections. All of these red dots and brown dots are individuals and organizations that we have some association with. And we're just starting to map them onto the different ideas. And so anyhow, if we go over the Miro board tomorrow morning and we have spare time, we can play with the Kumu map and look at our relationships and the organism at work. So that's at 9 o'clock. And I think that was it for housekeeping. I just wanted to let people know, think about your art project. Think about how you might want to put together a badge. You can just draw it on paper and take a picture with your phone and upload it. It can be simple, 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 and more later. Anything else actually, April or Ronnie? Okay. Thanks all for coming out tonight and for giving us a little more time, especially those in more Eastern areas, even though I know it's not Eastern time. And we'll see you tomorrow. And yeah, excited.
Take
Bye.
care. Good night.
Bye.